The blast tore through the night, unlike anything I'd ever heard. It wasn't thunder, it wasn't gunfire, it was the sound of an entire town's heartbeat ripping apart. In that instant, the ground beneath me shook, and Greenville was swallowed by the roar of the Mississippi. The levee had broken, and the river surged forward like a pack of beasts freed from chains. The windows rattled in their frames. The streetlights outside flickered once, then died. In the darkness, the world became an orchestra of collapse, sirens screaming, metal splitting, glass shattering, voices crying until they cracked. Above it all, rain lashed down like whips, shredding every breath. I saw my neighbor sobbing, clutching her child wrapped in a soaked blanket. An old man staggered with a suitcase, fell hard on the steps, and watched helplessly as clothes scattered into the mud. Trucks roared, tires skidding, clawing at the earth. Greenville, the familiar streets I had walked my whole life, was now a maze of panic. And through that chaos, there was another sound. Small, fragile, torn apart by rain and wind. Not an alarm, not a human voice. A cry ripped from a young throat. I swung my flashlight toward the backyard on Birch Street. My chest seized. Caught on a rotting fence, a Doberman puppy dangled. The water was already up to his chest. His front paws clawed at the slick wood. His neck strained against a rusted chain, biting deep, leaving raw red marks in his drenched fur. The beam caught his eye. Wide, trembling, yet burning with something I couldn't name. They weren't just afraid. They were asking, why? Why was I left behind? I stood frozen as rain pelted my face. Time stopped. I heard each ragged breath, sharp as knives tearing through tiny lungs. Every time he tried to pull higher, his paws left streaks of blood on the wood, wiped clean in an instant by the flood. A shout ripped me back. "Ethan, get in the truck!" My father, Tom Miller, gripped my shoulder hard. "The water's rising. We don't have time." But I couldn't look away. The pup shivered, his tail twitching once, just once, as if to say, "Don't leave me." Behind us, the neighborhood dissolved into chaos. Families crammed belongings into cars, doors slammed, and children wailed. No one turned. No one saw those eyes. My father's grip tightened, his voice sharpened. "Move, Ethan!" I opened my mouth, ready to plead. "Just 1 minute. I can break the chain." But the words lodged in my throat. 2 firefighters sloshed past, water at their waists, dragging Mrs. Hayes, the widow from across the street, from her porch. She clutched a photo album like it were her entire life. But as her flashlight wavered, it stopped, right where the puppy hung. I saw her falter, lips moving without sound. 1 second, 2, and then she was pulled away too. The current rage, the world ran. And the dog remained, suspended between life and death. A small, fragile body holding out against a monster flood. No bark, no cry, only those burning brown eyes daring someone, anyone, to hold their gaze. My father yanked me toward the truck. "Survive first, Ethan." "Only then can you save." I collapsed into the passenger seat. The door slammed, shutting out the sound, but not the image. That could not be shut away. Those eyes stayed, wet and pleading, asking a wordless question. Why was I the one left to drown? As our truck joined the exodus streaming toward the high school, I knew something had cracked open inside my chest. And inside that fracture, a vow began to burn. I would come back. The first light of morning after the levee broke was nothing like ordinary daylight. It was pale, cold, reflecting off the reddish-brown water that swallowed Greenville. The high school had turned into a shelter for hundreds who had lost their homes. And I, a 14-year-old boy, sat among them, still haunted by the brown eyes I had left behind on Birch Street. Inside the gym, rows of folding chairs and thin relief blankets stretched in lines. The air carried the damp stench of soaked clothes mixed with the watery soup steaming from a mobile kitchen. Children cried until their voices cracked. Adults whispered, their tones raw with exhaustion. Empty stares clung to the floor or the cracked walls, as if meeting one another's gaze might unleash more pain than anyone could bear. I sat near a window, staring out at the endless water. Where Birch Street once stood were now only rooftops, floating like lonely islands. My hands clenched around a coarse rope I had grabbed in haste, its fibers still pressed red into my skin. Every time my fingers brushed it, I saw that puppy hanging from the fence again, his eyes locked on me with a question I couldn't answer. "Ethan." My father sat beside me, voice low, steady, fighting to sound calm. "You did the right thing listening last night. Don't blame yourself." I nodded, but his words felt like echoes from far away. I wanted to believe him, but I still heard Shadow's ragged breaths, still saw his eyes blazing in the rain like two desperate sparks. Inside, I wanted to scream, "No, I didn't do well." I walked away. Across the row, I spotted Eleanor Hayes. She clutched her worn album tight, frozen like a statue. Her wrinkled face was rigid, her eyes rimmed red. She whispered to an elderly friend beside her, "I saw him." "Right there," he cried. He clung, and I turned away. Her voice cracked into sobs, small but sharp enough to cut through me. I understood her. I carried the same fracture in my chest. The day passed in layers of grief stacked on top of one another. Some wept for lost homes, some raged over ruined cars, some trembled with not knowing if loved ones had escaped. But for me, every noise blurred beneath one sound that would not fade. Shadow's breathing, fragile yet stubborn. The second night in the shelter, the rain softened, but no one slept. On the thin mattress, I tossed, staring at the ceiling, and his image came again. Clawing, sliding, blood-streaked wood, wide eyes, silent, pleading. I turned my head. Mrs. Hayes was awake too. She sat on the edge of her cot, gazing at the black window, lips moving like a prayer. I shut my eyes. And in that darkness, I swore again. If a chance came, I would return. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew this. I could not live the rest of my life with that gaze carved into me. In that crowded room of breath and tears, only two of us, a boy and a widow, carried the same vision. Brown eyes, wet and burning in the storm. A small life left behind. And the question that would not stop echoing, why didn't we stop? The second night fell over Greenville without the furious roar of the levee's collapse. Yet its silence was worse. Inside the high school gym, cots were packed shoulder to shoulder, whispered prayers tangled with the faint cries of children. But for me, it was all just background noise. The only thing left in my mind was the image of Shadow clinging to that rotting fence, brown eyes locked on me through the storm. I tossed on the thin blanket, restless. My father lay on the cot beside me, snoring softly, drained from a full day of hauling sandbags and helping the rescue crews. I envied his sleep. I couldn't close my eyes without the vision sharpening. Always the same. The pup slipping lower, claws streaking red across the wood, dragging himself back up, breath hitching as though it would snap in two. I opened my eyes to the black ceiling, my heart pounding as if I were still out there in the flood, not safe here. I turned my head and found Mrs. Hayes. She sat hunched at the edge of her cot, the album pressed tight against her chest. Her silver hair clung damp with sweat, but her eyes were fixed beyond the window, staring into nothing but mildew and dark. I caught the sound of her whisper, barely audible, but enough. "Lord, he's just a child. Please, hold him." Her voice cracked, breaking into sobs. I swallowed hard. Maybe she saw the same image I did. Maybe she was haunted by the same eyes. Outside, the waters still climbed. They said another day and a half, the town would vanish beneath the river. Inside the shelter, grief took different forms. Homes lost, family missing, lifetimes uprooted. But I realized something strange. Of all those losses, the one cutting deepest in me wasn't the house or the belongings. It was that small life left outside. A puppy, voiceless, without a choice, armed with nothing but pleading eyes. The night stretched on, unending. I rose and stepped toward the window. Beyond the glass, a thin moon blurred behind clouds, casting its dim glow across the black water. In it, I pictured Shadow still hanging there, tiny frame trembling with each breath. I closed my eyes, hearing it again. The rasp of his lungs, each inhale like a knife, each exhale like a prayer. They said no dog could survive 2 nights in floodwater. But my heart defied it. I didn't know why, but I was certain he was still there. Maybe because I had looked too closely, too directly into those eyes to believe they had gone dark. My hand clenched the window frame. "Don't give up," I whispered, not caring if anyone heard. "Please, Shadow. Don't give up." Across the room, Mrs. Hayes rose from her cot and moved slowly to another window. Her silhouette merged with the dim light of the moon. She stood there too, staring toward Birch Street, her shoulders trembling with restraint. And in that moment I knew we shared the same wound. I returned to my cot, but my heart refused to calm. In that crowded room of breath and tears, 2 souls, a boy and a widow, carried the same unspoken vow. Someday, somehow, we would go back. Because if we didn't, we would never escape those eyes. And that night, as the waters still climbed outside, I understood something chilling. The ghost of a puppy left behind could haunt a person more deeply than the loss of their own home. The 3rd day after the levee broke, the sky hung gray over Greenville like a burial shroud. Wind swept across the schoolyard, carrying the stench of mud and gasoline, clinging to the clothes of everyone packed inside the shelter. I still couldn't sleep, still haunted by those brown eyes. So when my father announced he had been assigned to a rescue boat crew, the words tumbled out of me before I could stop them. "Dad, let me come." He studied me for a long moment, exhaustion etched deep in his eyes. "Ethan, this isn't a game. The water's still strong. It's dangerous. I won't do anything reckless. I just need to see for myself." My voice trembled, but the resolve beneath it was iron. After a pause, he sighed and gave a small nod. "All right. But you stay glued to me. No straying, no arguing." We pulled on life vests and climbed into the wooden boat with its outboard motor rattling and growling beneath our feet. The brown flood stretched endlessly before us, covering what once were streets. Houses sank nearly to their roofs. Power poles jutted bare, wires trailing like weeds drifting in the current. The boat cut past Maple Street, then turned toward Birch. Floating debris drifted everywhere, wooden chairs, children's toys, even the statue of the Virgin Mary, torn from its church foundation. I sat pressed against the rail, eyes scanning every rooftop, every corner of every fence. I didn't say it out loud, but in my chest one truth beat steadily. He was still there. My father's hand settled on my shoulder. "Ethan, you need to be ready. Not everything survives 2 nights out here." I swallowed hard, offering no reply. Then the boat swung around another bend. and I saw him. A splintered section of fence stuck up from the water, and on it, a small figure hung suspended, black and brown, shaking, soaked through. His front paws clung tight, claws carving bloody lines into the wood. His frame was skeletal, ears drooping. But the eyes, God, those eyes, still burned. "Dad!" I shouted, my voice cracking. "It's him! He's alive!" One of the rescue men glanced where I pointed, then shook his head. "Kid, you're seeing things. Nothing lasts 3 days in a flood." "No!" I lurched upright, finger stabbing forward. "I see him clear as day." Another man sighed, voice flat. "We've got to prioritize people. A puppy's not worth the risk." The words struck like a blade through my chest. Not worth the risk? I looked at Shadow. He still hung there, trembling, eyes fixed on us. No barking, no whimpering, just watching, as if he knew this was his final chance. My fists clenched until my nails bit skin. In that instant, the truth crystallized. If we turned away now, he would be gone, and if I turned away, some part of me would die with him. "Dad," I whispered, throat tight. "I can't leave him." My father's gaze met mine, torn and pained. The boat shook violently beneath us, waves battering the sides, wind screaming in our ears. But all of it blurred away. Only those brown eyes remained, burning through the storm. 1 beat, 2, and I heard my own voice murmur, "If no one else will go back, then I will." They said, "Not worth the risk." The words hammered in my head like steel on steel. I looked at Shadow. He was still clinging to that splintered beam, body trembling, blood trailing from his claws into the current. His brown eyes locked on us, not pleading anymore, just waiting for a verdict. I don't remember what I thought in that instant, only that my legs sprang up on their own, heart pounding so hard it threatened to tear out of my chest. Before anyone could grab me, I leapt. The water struck like 1,000 blades. My breath was crushed at once, the river spinning me, dragging me under, slamming me against floating debris. But above, those eyes still burned. I clenched my jaw, slashed my arms through the current, each stroke a battle. "Ethan!" My father's voice roared from the boat. "Get back here!" I didn't turn. Only the thunder of water in my ears, the hammer of my heart, the short, ragged gasps as if my lungs were being stolen. Ahead, I saw Shadow slip lower, paws scraping weakly at the wood. "Don't let go!" I shouted, though the wind devoured my words. A wave crashed straight into my face, driving me under. The cold crushed my chest, dragged me deeper. I thrashed, burst to the surface, eyes burning. I saw him, just inches from falling away. I threw everything I had into the last strokes, slammed my hand onto the jagged fence. Pain tore through my palm, but I held on. Shadow stared at me, eyes glazed with exhaustion, but still holding a flicker of light. My hands shook as I fumbled the rope from my waist, wrapping it around his tiny frame. Fingers numb, but I tied, pulled, cinched. "I've got you," I gasped. "No one's leaving you again." Shadow sagged in my arms, nearly gone limp, but pressed against me, I felt it, the faint thud of a heartbeat, weak, but alive. In that moment I knew. This was why I jumped. From the boat, they hurled a rope. My father's voice cracked with desperation. "Wrap it around both of you, now!" I looped the line around my chest and around Shadow's, pulling tight until my hands shook. Another wave slammed us, water filling my mouth, choking me. But I never loosened my grip. "Hold on! Hold!" Someone shouted. They pulled. The river pulled back. I was torn in half between them, my lungs seared, vision blurred, but I clutched him tighter. A voice hissed inside me. "If I let go, he dies. And if he dies, part of me dies too. A violent yank, and a solid hand seized my shirt, dragging us both upward. I smashed into the side of the boat, ribs screaming, then my legs cleared the rail, and we collapsed onto the soaked wooden floor. I sprawled out, heaving, coughing, water pouring from my mouth. Shadow dropped beside me, shuddering, chest rising in frail jolts. For a breathless beat, the boat fell silent. No one believed what they were seeing. My father knelt, clutching my shoulders, his voice raw. "You're insane, Ethan. Do you realize what you just risked?" I choked out words between gasps, but they came firm, unshaken. If I hadn't jumped, he'd be dead. Silence settled. Outside, the flood still raged, the wind still howled, but on that deck there was a strange hush. Shadow opened his eyes, those trembling brown eyes fixed on me. He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He just looked. And in that look, I felt an invisible cord tighten, binding us, two lives locked together. We had escaped the river. But I knew. The real story had only just begun. The gym floor of Greenville High echoed like a hollow drum. Children's cries tangled with whispered prayers, wet shoes dragging across water-streaked tiles. All of it swelled into one heavy, discordant chorus. But when I carried Shadow in my arms, the world collapsed into a circle no larger than us, me and the small, soaked, trembling body pressed against my chest. "Put him here!" A sharp, commanding voice cut through the noise. I looked up. A young woman, blonde hair tied in a hasty knot, coat stained with mud, knelt on the floor. Her eyes burned with fierce focus. "I'm Rachel Coleman, volunteer vet. Lay him down, now!" I dropped to my knees, hands shaking as I set Shadow onto the old blanket Rachel spread across the tiles. "Please, save him," I begged, as if my own breath depended on her answer. Rachel's hands swept down his frail body, ear pressed to his icy chest. Pulse is weak. Body temperature dangerously low. Blood loss from the pause. "We need fluids immediately." She sprang up, shouting across the gym. "Saline! Heat packs, heat lamp, move!" A group of young volunteers scrambled. I clutched Shadow's tiny paw, sticky with blood, cold as ice. I held it tight in my palm, whispering, "Hear me, Shadow. You survived 3 days. Don't give up now. Don't—" No answer. Only his chest, rising shallow and thin as a thread, each breath threatening to break. Across the room, a familiar figure stepped forward. Eleanor Hayes. She stood clutching her worn album, face locked in grief. Step by step, she sank to her knees beside me. Her withered hands trembled as they touched the edge of the blanket. "Oh, Lord," she whispered, tears blurring her eyes. "It's him. Those eyes." She bent close, her voice breaking like glass under storm winds. "Forgive me, little one." I turned away. "I left you." My throat tightened. You knew him before?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I saw him every day by the fence. Those eyes followed me when I passed. Sometimes I slipped him pieces of bread. But when the water came," she choked, breath shattering, "I didn't go back." I left him. I shook my head hard. "But you're here now. He knows. He won't blame you." Rachel's voice snapped, taut as a string. "I need someone to hold him steady. He can't jerk when I put the needle in." "I'll do it," I blurted. My grip tightened on Shadow's bloody paw, forcing steadiness into my hands. Rachel leaned in, deft fingers searching for a fragile vein. The needle slid in. I held my breath until I saw the clear fluid drip, one bead at a time, like a clock counting down. She quickly packed heat against his chest, wrapping him in dry blankets. Behind us, my father, Tom Miller, stood towering, His heavy hand pressed on my shoulder, radiating both anger and pride. He didn't speak, but I knew. He saw the recklessness, and he understood it too. Time bent. I counted each frail breath. Each weak heartbeat tested me. Once his chest seemed to stop. I jerked up, panicked. "Rachel!" Shh. She pressed her stethoscope to his chest. "He's still here." Slow, but steady. Her tone softened, though her eyes never wavered. Eleanor pressed her trembling palms over Shadow's legs. "Don't leave me. Don't leave this boy. You are our hope." Her broken voice folded into the chaos of hundreds around us, but here, beside that ragged blanket, it rang like prayer. I don't know how long it was. Hours, maybe minutes. Everything blurred. All I could see was his body. Then it happened. The smallest motion, his tail. It twitched, just once, bare as a breeze. But to me it was a salvation bell. I broke into sobs, voice cracking. "Rachel!" He moved. Rachel bent low, ear against his chest. A few tense seconds crawled by before she looked up, a tired but radiant smile breaking across her face. "Heartbeat stronger. He's coming back." I buried my face into Shadow's paw, tears spilling unchecked. Eleanor dropped her album, covering her face with both hands, sobbing. My father's grip tightened on my shoulder, his eyes glimmering in the damp, flickering light of the gym. In that room, packed with the homeless and broken, among cries, moans, and the hollow sound of despair, one small corner blazed with light. Not from a lamp, but from a humble miracle. A puppy still alive. Shadow hadn't let go. He clung to life until the last possible moment, and because of that, we found something too. Faith. The belief that compassion could still be stronger than the raging Mississippi outside. Greenville, after the flood, was no longer the town I had known. Familiar streets turned into stretches of stained mud. Old walls bore dark watermarks, windows shattered into hollow sockets. The air reeked of mildew, gasoline, and rotting trash, carried on every gust of wind. People moved slowly through the wreckage, eyes lowered, each shouldering their own loss. And yet, in all that ruin, one small life had defied it all. Shadow. The puppy once abandoned in the flood was alive again. The wounds on his paws that once bled were now only faint scars. His black and brown coat was dry, warm under new sunlight. His eyes were no longer clouded by fear, but shone bright, sharp, glimmering with gratitude. And when his thin tail wagged, we all knew. He had crossed back from the edge. Rachel Coleman peeled off the last bandage, dropped down onto the floor, exhaling relief. "He made it," she said, voice hoarse, but her eyes alight. "He's strong enough to leave the shelter." I collapsed forward, wrapping Shadow in my arms. He pressed his muzzle to my chest, breathed warm against me. That small heart still beat, still fought, and now it leaned on me. I laughed through tears, hands trembling as I stroked him. "Hear that, Shadow?" We did it. Behind us, my father stood with arms folded, silent. His face was hard, but his eyes gave him away. Anger, pride, and something else, too. After a moment, he stepped closer, voice low. "Ethan, you understand this responsibility. A dog needs more than love. He needs patience, sacrifice. You'd better be sure." I lifted my head, staring into his eyes. "I dove into a flood to pull him out. I will never let him go again." The words hung in the stillness. He said nothing at first, only looked at me for a long time. Then, unexpectedly, He nodded. A small nod, but it carried the weight of everything I had longed for. The day Shadow left the shelter, the first sunlight in weeks broke through clouds, spilling gold across the muddy streets. It felt like baptism, turning ruins into a canvas of hope. I laid a clean towel across the back seat. "Come on, Shadow," I whispered. "Your new home is waiting." Eleanor Hayes was there that morning. She didn't hold her old album anymore. In her hands was a new notebook, the cover still smelling of paper untouched. She pressed it into mine, her voice shaking. "Inside are photos I took from afar, him, sitting alone by the fence. I want him to know that even when he was overlooked, someone was watching." I clutched the book, throat tight. "I promised to give him a home. But your family, too. You can come any time." Ellie froze, then embraced me. Her frail shoulders quivered in sobs. When she let go, she bent, lips trembling against Shadow's forehead. The pup looked up, nuzzled her palm, and whined softly. The sound was a forgiveness no words could hold. The truck shuddered as my father started the engine. Tires crushed through mud, turning onto Maple Street. I glanced back. Ellie stood in the sunlight, thin frame steady, clutching the notebook to her chest, and for the first time in years, her eyes glowed. Shadow sat beside me, ears drooped but eyes wide, staring ahead. I rested my hand on his back. He licked my fingers, weak, but full of trust. On the road home, the streets stretched like scars still healing. But inside the truck, I felt something else. Amid loss, we had found a life reborn. And through him, we found pieces of ourselves again. I remembered that night, him clinging to a rotting fence, eyes blazing in despair. Now the same eyes no longer asked, "Why was I left behind?" They glimmered with a new truth. I was chosen. I opened Ellie's notebook. Blurred photos, taken from afar through the fence. A puppy huddled in the yard, rain cutting down, eyes silent. I smiled faintly. He had never been invisible. He had always had a witness. And now, he had a family. My father drove, eyes fixed on the broken road, but the corner of his mouth lifted. I knew he felt it too. We had lost much in the flood, but we had found something no storm could wash away. Shadow leaned his head against my hand, eyes drifting shut. His breathing is steady, peaceful. He believed. This time, no one would abandon him. And in the silence of a town still drowning in mud, I understood. Saving one small life can also mean saving a human soul. Greenville still bore the wounds of the flood, but in its ruins, a puppy had taught us something no river could erase: compassion. Shadow hadn't just survived. He had pulled us out of despair, reminding us that even the smallest life deserves to be fought for. Looking back, from the moment he clung to that broken fence to the first wag of his tail, I knew rescuing a puppy was never only about giving him life. It was about saving a piece of our own humanity. And now, with Shadow home, with a family, he left us all with one question. How many lives are still out there, waiting for someone to return? If you've ever reached out to save an animal, share your story in the comments. Every memory of kindness has the power to inspire thousands more. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so together we can build a community where no life is ever dismissed as not worth saving. Because sometimes, one small act from you can change an entire world, for a creature and for yourself.